doing this. There we go. Okay, recording it. I'm the host. I'm in charge now, like I'm supposed to be. Okay. Well, thanks you three for being here. We're excited that we're still able to do discovery. It's if Kent shows up here in a few minutes, he can talk about it too. Like I said, he's been doing it for longer, but it's a lot of fun. It's probably one of my favorite parts of my job is being able to do this, mostly because I identify with this process very strongly because um, I don't know what boat you're in. We get people in from Discovery who I'm pretty sure I know what my major is, but I want to confirm. We get people who say, I don't know what I want to do, but I know the major I'm in is not it. Or you're still undeclared and you have no idea what it is you want to do. Or you picked a major just because you felt like being undeclared would be too scary, but you're not taking anything. I mean, running the gamut. I have five. I always forget. I have to count. I have 5 different majors. When I was here at ACU. I started off math teaching and decided I didn't want to take like differential equations and all that stuff just to teach middle school math. Then I was English teaching. Then I was youth ministry for a while. Then I was composite interdisciplinary because I thought that I couldn't graduate on time. And then Dr. McIlvain, who is no longer here but was in the psych department, informed me that I could. And him and Dr. Beck kind of looked at my schedule like, you can graduate on time with a real full psych degree. I was like, great, that's amazing. And then even from there, I went to my first week of graduate school in school psychology thinking, I'm pretty sure I want to do this, but the add drop period's all week long. So if I go to the first couple classes and I hate it, I'll just drop it and find a job until I figure out what I want to do with my life. And so there is no expectation that you already even have an idea. There's also, we'll talk about this later, no expectation that you're going to have a 100% definitive definition by the end of this. What we want to do is get you set up to make a good decision that you feel good about. And so that's part of what I do. The other thing I do here at ACU is I'm an academic advisor for psychology, engineering, and physics. And Kent, when he's here, he advises for finance and accounting, and he's also one of our associate directors. So he does a bunch of stuff with our data collection and whatever. But he's a marriage and family therapist by training, and he's done career counseling and all kinds of different counseling for forever. And so both of us just really enjoy working with people and helping them. And you know, Kent had a little bit more educationally kind of a straight path, but that's part of the reason I have a passion for this is just because, man, I was just making it up. And I was like, this class is boring. I think I'll change my major, and wouldn't even really talk to anybody or think about why it was I was picking certain majors for a long time, which is not what I would recommend. There's no one right way to do it, but I know there's a wrong way, which is to just guess and just stick with, and just be whatever. Right. So I will start with a prayer just real briefly, and then we'll get into kind of setting up what is Discovery all about, what are we trying to accomplish, and what's the process. So if y'all will bow with me just real quick. Dear Father, we thank you so much for all of the blessings you give us, especially in a time like this where it's hard and everybody's got different challenges, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. So I pray that you will be with all of that that's going on, and you will provide help to those who need it and comfort to those who need it, and that we will all act with wisdom and compassion towards each other. God, for our discovery time, I just pray that we will listen to your spirit. We will let it to move us, that we will be confident in the gifts that you've given us. We will be accepting of help from other people, and that whatever we do, whatever we choose, God, that we will glorify you in that. And it's in your son's name we pray. Amen. Okay. So what are we doing in discovery, right? So if you talk to me or you talk to Kenny, your advisor, they may have explained it to you a little bit. Again, how I describe it is helping students understand themselves better, understand what they want out of life, and understand how they make decisions the most effective way, so that when you go through that whole process, it's kind of like giving you a good process that you can then plug in all your information and thoughts and feelings and desires and gifts into, and then come out with something on the other end eventually that you will say, this is helpful to me. This is good. I feel I have narrowed it down, or I feel good about a decision, or at least I know what my next step is, and I know that's the right step. I think of that as it always makes me think of Genesis, the book of, in a couple of different ways. And this idea of making order out of chaos, right? That's literally like the first verse in the Bible is that creation was formless and void and without any kind of order to it. And God steps in and says, okay, first thing, right, we're dividing light and dark. And through that whole story, that metaphor, he's basically systematically, right, creating order and a place and a job for everything from this like chaotic nothingness. And my experience has been that's how a lot of students feel when trying to choose a career, or you have a major already and you don't know what you want to do with it, or you don't even have a major yet, or something like that, is it feels very chaotic, and there's too many choices, and there's too many people giving you their opinions, and there's too many factors. And so what we're trying to do is kind of, hey, let's compartmentalize some of those and maybe define them a little bit better. And again, give good process. I also think about Genesis with this because weirdly, I think about the story of Cain and Abel, right? Cain and Abel both bring a sacrifice to God, and Abel brings the best thing that he has to offer to God. And Cain is kind of like, at the last minute, throws something together and then gets really mad when that's not acceptable. And this is not my original thought because I'm not this smart, but this idea that part of the lesson of this story is to be prepared. Like, why do we sacrifice? Like, maybe not, none of us have maybe sacrificed an animal on an altar ever, but we have sacrificed something in the future. We've sacrificed an immediate gain for something later on that's going to be more worthwhile. So the hard work you put in now, the thinking about it now when it's scary and trying to like, oh, it's only my freshman year, I don't need to think about this yet, or it's only my junior year, I still have, wherever you are in that, you can try to, again, go through maybe a little bit of pain, a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of uncomfortable, new things that might stretch you in some ways in order to later on be prepared for when that has to happen. And I say all that to, again, one, put your mind at ease that we're not going to be like, what's your major now? Here's the change of program form, sign it, at the end of this, but also that there is a way forward. You can do that. Carl Jung, I'm a psychology guy. That's all my education here at ACU. Carl Jung is one of the first, he's a student of Sigmund Freud, who probably everybody's heard of. He's kind of the father of psychology, right? Carl Jung was one of his students, one of the early thinkers, and he thinks a whole bunch of kind of interesting but weird stuff. But one of the biggest things about Carl Jung was that we have to know ourselves completely and engage all parts of ourselves, good and bad, in order to be able to grow as people. And so I really just like this quote because, as you can see on the screen, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. So looking at that stuff, what makes us tick as people, right? What am I passionate about? Am I introverted or am I extroverted? What kind of problem solving do I like? Do I like working in teams? Do I like risky situations? Do I want to be in charge? Do I care about work-life balance? Do I care about being able to travel? Do I care about, promotions and having a ladder that I can climb and like accomplishing goals? Because some people do and some people don't, right? And so if we know that stuff about ourselves, again, we're awakening to a lot more touch points as far as picking a major. Because I find often some people just think, well, what do you want to do? Well, who knows? And what you want to do might change. And you probably won't do the same thing your entire life, right? What do you like? What are you interested in? Well, as we'll talk in a minute, that's usually not enough to answer this question. Just I like lots of things, but that doesn't mean I want that to be my job. You know what I mean? I love watching baseball. I will never be shortstop for the Atlanta Braves like I thought I would be when I was 8 years old. Not going to happen at this point. Probably was really never going to happen. Although I did get mono in Little League and missed the whole season, so I think that kind of threw my developmental track off. So there's a timeline out there where I didn't get it, and I'm, I got to play with Chipper Jones and all that kind of stuff, and but help them maybe win more than one World Series. But whatever, right? That's not going to happen. That's gone. So it's we've got to, just because you like something, right, doesn't mean that maybe that's the path for you. Okay, so you may not have done this yet, and that's okay. But when you get a chance to go to the Canvas course, probably the most important thing on there's going to be a file in that first module that is the Discovery Workbook. So if you can do it right now, if you can do that on your setup and bring it up and look at it. If not, go back and look at it later. I'll put some more instructions in there about what to do. There's a video that I'd like you to watch. It's super short, and then kind of fill out some pages in that workbook. The first thing is to talk about expectations and goals. And we do differentiate between that in Discovery, because an expectation is more what we think is going to happen. Like, what do I just think is going to happen with this? Like, be honest when you're writing it down. No one's going to see this but you. So if you're like, I am doing this because I want to be able to tell my parents that I tried something, but I have no idea. Or I do know what I want to do, but I'm just doing this because I'm going to say, hey, I explored majors, but I'm still sticking with X or whatever, right? Or I expect that this will solve all my problems and I will never question anything in my life again, right? Those are two extremes, and you're probably not in either one of those, but you might be. That's okay. A goal is really what you hope to get out of it, which, right, okay, maybe I'm feeling like this is not going to work out. Like, I think it's going to be a waste of my time. My expectation is I'll be bored. But my goal would be, hey, it'd be awesome if I could narrow it down to 2 majors so I could pick classes for next semester and see what I want to do, right? Or my goal is I want to confirm that I'm on the right path, even though I'm kind of questioning it right now, right? I think it's important to have those at the outset, because then everything we do can be in service to that. There is a phrase that I don't remember where it comes from. I heard it when I was at ACU working leadership camps. I'm sure it's somebody famous for some reason said it, but they used to tell us all the time, and all the stuff we were doing to prep for camp was to begin with the end in mind. right? This idea that where am I going to end up? I know eventually I'm going to have to pick a major, right? So I'm going to engage in every part of this process with that goal in my mind, knowing that I'm not going to like blow it off maybe, or I'm going to like be honest about what I'm saying and thinking about, because being dishonest with myself is not serving that goal, right? Because I'm going to have to reckon with those feelings or those thoughts or my abilities at some point, right? Um, I see this a lot with my engineering students sometimes, because it doesn't matter how smart they are, there's so much work involved in that, right? That at some point someone's gonna be like, why is this so hard for me? Nothing has ever been hard for me school wise before. And it's like, just because you had to do homework for 6 straight hours didn't mean that it's hard or that you're a bad person. It just means your professors gave you a whole lot of homework, right? But I see some of them sometimes where it's like, I'm already having a hard time and I hate this math, but I'm going to ignore that feeling because I want to be an engineer. It'll probably get better. And it's like, okay, but at the end, if you don't like this and then you leave with a degree in something that is not right for you, what were we doing back there in freshman year when someone was saying, hey, do you hate this? It's okay if you hate it. Faculty members will say that to students, like, if you hate this, don't keep this as your major, switch to somebody else's. And so that's just an encouragement, again, to kind of stick through it, right? And remember that there is a goal, that this is going to be in service of it. And so when you go to that workbook, write that down, just I think is a good reminder to kind of what we're doing here. So there's that part of it where we want to think about the end. We want to be ready for it. We want to be honest about our expectations, kind of where we are. We also want to remember that you're not alone. This is not a journey that anyone takes by themselves. Of course, you ultimately have to make that decision, right? But everybody's got relationships that affect these things. Hopefully, right? It's still an assumption, but it's a relatively safe assumption at ACU anyways, that God factors in there somewhere, right? Whether you're relying on him to guide you, or you just think that he's endowed you with certain skills and abilities and a personality that, have helped you, or he curated an environment and he gave me this family that can help me, whatever that is, the message, God gives us that he loves us all the time, no matter what. So in that sense, our major doesn't really matter, which hopefully is a relief, right? But also, like, God wants good things for us. He is prepared for, he tells us he's prepared things for us to do, work out there for us. So there's something somewhere God is ready for you to say yes to, right? And so I think it's important to remember that we're not kind of just cast to the wind at random necessarily, right? Like, we've been given things that can do that. There's also those who go before us. So this is a picture of, Kent made this slide forever ago, and I've liked the metaphor, even though I am not a mountain climber. I think I've only done it like once in my life, and it wasn't even that big of a mountain. But he's from Colorado, so he likes humongous mountains and climbing them and being outdoors way more than I do. But on a lot of these trails and mountains, like when people get to the top, they will pick up a stone and put it on there. It always makes me think of Moana. So I guess I could change this to Moana, right? Where she's laying the stones on the top of the mountain, like every chief that's come before. But like, people on that trail will put the stone to say, like, I was here. And over time, right, this giant kind of mound or altar builds. And you all have people that have gone before you, whether it's professors that have seen a bunch of students and know how to help people navigate these situations, or they know how to help people predict outcomes. It could be older classmates or older siblings that have gone through college before, and they're like, hey, yeah, everyone feels this way. I can tell you, you're not alone in this feeling. Or an advisor, or a parent, or a grandparent, that maybe is even in the field that you're in. You probably know somebody who has done what you're thinking you want to do. Great, you can use them as a resource, right? Because they've done it before and they can tell you. You don't have to go into it like blind. I have no idea what's happening, right? And then there's those that travel along with us. If we're keeping our metaphor, you go, there's the buddy system when you're traveling, and when you are hiking or out there, we take people with us, so that if someone is hurt or something happens along the way, there's someone who can help and someone who can go for help if we need to, right? And remember that you've got, and those might be some overlap there, right? It might be siblings, it might be parents. We're all in the journey together a little bit. And so the encouragement from this is just to like that's what they're there for, right? Like, use the people that have come before you and ask them good questions, but also lean on the people that are near you. And so if you're feeling stressed, or if you're feeling excited, or anything in between, like, share that with the people that you're sharing your lives with, right? And don't kind of go it alone, right? I'm not going to remember the guy from English. If any of y'all have taken sophomore lit, you remember the no man is an island. It's going to come to me like at the end of the slideshow, right? That's that idea. Like, none of us, are alone, even if we feel that way. And so there is a relational aspect to this, right? And some people feel pressure. There are some negative things maybe that can come out of that, but I think mostly, if we approach it the right way, it can be positive, and we've got valuable resources. We all have a support system, right? We don't have to make these big life decisions just kind of, all by ourselves if we don't want to. And so what we're kind of going for here, right, in discovery, in addition to you learning about yourself, is finding this sweet spot, okay? And I'll talk about what a sweet spot means on the next slide, but one way of thinking of it is, we all of us, especially at ACU, I think we talk about calling a lot, and it's helpful most of the time, but sometimes if you don't feel particularly called to something, you can kind of be like, okay, well, that's not me. No voice has talked to me to tell me this is what I was meant to do. And so I think it's important to remember that we all have the same calling ultimately, right? Which is this passage from Matthew, to love God with everything that we have, right? And then after that, to love others as well as we love ourselves. Like Jesus, when they asked him, he's like, this is the most important thing. If you're doing that, whatever format it takes, you are fulfilling the calling that God has for you. Now, your mission, as we define it, your specific gifts, the specific ways you do that, might be a little bit different. Frederick Buechner is an American theologian, and so he, spent a lot of time thinking about what God wants for people. And I think this is a really nice quote, that the place where God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. Everybody's got different gifts. Everyone has different things they're good at. We're not all cut out to be. I mean, even Paul talks about that, right? Some of us are teachers, and some of us are missionaries, and some of us serve. And so, if you're wanting to make a difference, or you're wanting to find the right place that's going to look differently for everybody, you might have multiple options there. The comforting part of that is, and again, the whole first part of this is like relieve pressure on you, is that God just wants you to love him and love other people, and whatever framework that takes. If it's a job that makes you a whole lot of money or makes zero money, or a job that your parents approve of or they don't approve of, or a job that is going to get you a lot of recognition or not, like, that's all fine, right? It's all about figuring out what is that spot where I kind of bring all these things together. And so Max Lucado has a really great book that is about career and calling and all these kind of things. And the name always escapes me. I should write it down at this part in the presentation. I always forget the name of that book. I'm gonna open my Kindle because I literally I have that on here right now. But he has this idea in there of your sweet spot. Like, everyone's got a sweet spot when it comes to their career and their life, and kind of how that works for them. Cure for the Common Life. I always want to say Purpose Driven Life. That's a different book, also good. But so it's A Cure for the Common Life. Because a lot of people kind of feel like I'm just doing it. I'm just going through the motions, right? How do I avoid that? And bringing in because we all have to work. So how do we bring that into our mind and what we're doing? And he gives this Venn diagram that's on your screen of, like, your sweet spot is where your strengths is given to you by God, what you're good at, what you're capable of doing, overlaps with what you can do to bring glory to God, right? Because just like we just talked about, like, that's ultimately, and that looks different. There's a lot of different ways to do that, and where that overlaps with what you can actually do in your everyday life, right? And so, my example for that is always like, you're in school right now, okay? So being a philanthropist might not be practical for you right now, because most college students don't just have a lot of spare cash lying around, right? Okay, so you might be really good at that and have a heart for giving. And yes, there's definitely need in the world, but your everyday life right now, like, you do not have those funds, right? Like, that's probably not going to happen, or you probably can't drop whatever you're doing right now and go. I mean, literally right now, right? Like, all of our everyday lives is social distancing. So unless you're already a nurse or a doctor or something like that, maybe you don't get to go out there and do that right now. Whatever you might normally volunteer with, right? Or something that you might be doing that you think is helping people or that's fulfilling to you, it may be taken away now. And so what is it in our everyday circumstance with these other things? Because there is a practical aspect to it, right? We can't all do that. We can't all drop what we're doing and move to the other side of the world, right? And join the Peace Corps, right? Because we have responsibilities and things that we would be abandoning if we were doing that. And so I love this metaphor, because I think, not when we talk about this, we don't always bring in all three of these. A lot of people are like, well, what does God want me to do? But we don't think about what we're good at, and we think we have to do this other definition of it. Or we think, well, I can't do that right now, so that means I can't do anything, right? That's not true. And so when you're thinking about a career and stuff, think about these experiences in your life where you felt this. Where did I feel like I was doing something good for God? And it was like, where I was, obviously, since I did it, it was a possibility in my life. And I felt like, man, am I good at this, right? I think that's, and as you go through this whole process, think about those things when you're answering these questions on the surveys or the assessments, or you're doing different activities. Kind of think about where are all these different aspects of myself coming together, and can I equate that back and think of an experience in my life where I was like, man, yeah, that I felt right. I felt like I was in that sweet spot when that was happening. Okay. Now, it's all well and good to talk about, okay, figuring out the sweet spot, figuring out what I'm called to do, maybe what my mission might be, maybe what I'm good at. Like, that's great, but how do I do that? Right? That's that part gets left off on some of these. Like if you watch a motivational TED talk about something, it's always like, okay, well, that's a great idea, but how do we actually accomplish whatever you're talking about? There are 3 examples, I think, from the Bible that are good examples of how we do that, especially when we're considering the spiritual aspect and how do we connect with our Creator and kind of what He's given us. The first would be Moses, right? How did Moses do that? Moses kind of like ignored it and said no and drug his feet the whole time, right? It was like, you got to send somebody else. My brother Aaron's way better at this. I don't want to do this. And even in the desert, he's like, okay, God, these people are driving me crazy because they won't stop complaining and I can't do it and it's super duper hard or whatever. But Moses kind of he keep on keeping on, right? I think that's an important thing to remember is even if we don't figure it out right now, trusting even through our doubt and through our fear and through our concerns and continuing to go along with the things we know are right deep down. A lot of us have that inside where it's like, I know this is what I should be doing right now, but I really, really don't want to do it. Doing that kind of stuff anyways, right, is a powerful tool in accomplishing any kind of goal, but especially this, right? Samuel, I realized for these pictures, like other than maybe Mary, right, you wouldn't look at this and think, oh, that was obviously Samuel, but old Bible guy. Samuel, right, for him, it was removing distractions, right? He was hearing the voice of God. You remember the story when he's a kid and he keeps going and asking the rabbi he's working with, like, you were calling me. And finally the rabbi figures out what's going on. And he's like, just be ready. And when you hear that voice again, respond to it. So I think there's 2 parts to that if we want to be like Samuel. One, some of it is kind of removing some of the distractions, right? The things that are making it hard for us to make these decisions or the other considerations that aren't those important kind of sweet spot, hierarchies. Let's forget about those for a minute. And then let's also let's listen and be ready for when the opportunity arises. I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to be ready when I have this experience. I'm going to really sink into it and let it inform me. And then Mary was someone who was then presented that opportunity, would say, hey, you've got this opportunity. And she said yes to it, right? She was scared. She did it anyways. The Bible says she treasured these things in her heart because it was like, hey, I know this is important. It's happening right now, but that's pretty momentous, right? To be told like, hey, you're going to have a baby and that baby's going to like save the whole world, right? And so, Samuel's being ready to listen and hear those things. Mary's that part of it where we accept it and we do it and we move on. The thing popped up and said I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to go through this. We're almost done anyways, so I think I'm on a pretty good track here. But if it cuts us off, that's okay, and we'll move on. So the last couple of things I want to leave you with, right? We're going to connect. We're going to explore some things about ourselves. We're going to learn. We're going to try to listen and be ready to what God has to say for us. We're going to do things that are hard, even though maybe we don't want to. And we're going to consider all these aspects. There's a couple things just about careers that I want to leave you guys with. Hopefully that will set you up for the right frame of mind, but maybe will be a little bit of a relief too. First of all, is that compared to when your parents and especially your grandparents were picking jobs, it was like having the old pre-smartphone phones, which you guys are probably old enough to remember. You may not have ever had one. But it was like if you were picking a game on your phone to play, you had like 2 choices. And if you were bad at both of them, that sucks. Usually you had one you were slightly better at, and so that's what you ended up playing. Whereas now, there's 80 million gajillion things you can do on your phone at any given moment, right? Whether it's playing a game or being productive or, looking at something on Instagram or watching, TV or whatever it is on your phone. Like the options are endless. And that's how it is now picking a career. Back when our grandparents and our parents were picking a career, there was like a couple things you could do. Right. And it was kind of like you went to college, you got a job in it, you did it. That's what you did. Well, now it's like, even if you get a degree in something, there's so many different things you can do. You can just, people just start blogs about stuff and it becomes their job, which has been a thing for a while now, but still blows my mind that like a random person can just be like, I'm an expert in this now. And I've just created it on the internet and this is what I do. And so, you could do that right. And that can be hard and it's true. There are a lot of choices. It's kind of a first world problem, right? Because, oh no, like there's so many different things I can choose from now. How awful. But it definitely can be overwhelming, right? So that's something we understand and we know, but just know that if it feels like you don't have a lot of options, you really do. And we can talk through those and what those mean. The other thing that has been different in generations past is typically you left a job when you were either fired because you were terrible at it, you retired because you'd worked at a company for 30, 40 years and it was time to retire, or you died. And obviously you can't work anymore, right? And those are the only options. That is not the case anymore. People change careers all of the time. Like the average is like 3 career changes like in a working life now. Both Kent and myself are examples of this. We've both had other, not just other jobs, but like other jobs in different fields, Like I'm obviously not in an elementary school doing school psychology and working with kids in special ed anymore, even though I did that for a few years, right? And even at ACU, I did international recruiting for a while and was on the admission side. So I'm still higher ed, but it's a very different place now working with current students rather than recruiting them. And so sometimes it stresses people out because they're like, wait, you're telling me I got to pick this major, I'm going to pick a job, and that might not be the last time I have to do that. I am telling you that. But also, it should be a relief because it means you've chosen this. You're not stuck in it forever. So if it becomes something that you don't like or you learn more about yourself through doing that and you think, man, I kind of want to pivot, sure, changing your major and still graduating in 4 years might not be an option anymore if you get to your senior year and you decide you don't like what you're doing. But just because you have that doesn't mean you're limited. And just because you do a job for a while doesn't mean that's always what you're going to be doing. So keep that in mind too. And the last thing I want to talk about is on Canvas, there is a mod on the module. There's a link to a video with Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. If you've ever heard that show or watched it, I'd like you to watch it. It's about 3-4 minutes long. He talks about passions. I think that's really an important topic. Watch that video. And then in the Discovery workbook, there's a passions checklist. I'd like you to go through on there and click it. The file in Canvas is a fillable PDF. So if you want to print it out, you can. If you want to just save it on your computer, you can click and check the boxes. And type stuff in that. And we kind of got them categorized a little bit, but go ahead and do that, right? And just start thinking, what am I interested in doing? What am I passionate? You may have already done this before, but look through that list. Maybe it generates some ideas, but do it after watching that video, like I said, so you kind of have a context for what Mike talks about. Because to give you a brief summary, he's basically like, passion is important, but it can't be the only thing we have. We might bring it with us to whatever's in front of us, but we got to be realistic about our opportunities, and we got to be realistic about, if my passion is making pancakes, there's not a lot of pancake related careers out there. So maybe I got to take that passion, boil it down to its most essential elements, and apply that to something else that I can actually make happen, right? Because I'm either working at a diner or I'm running like a food truck. Those are about the only pancake related jobs I can think of, right? And so if that's the thing that makes you happiest in the world, great, pursue it if you want. But if there's other things going on, maybe you can't just follow your passion blindly everywhere because it doesn't always lead you to the right things. So I know that was really fast because we're limited by Zoom. If you guys have questions afterwards, please email me. Again, go and accept that invitation to the Canvas thing so you can get the workbook. On Thursday at 11, we will meet again. We will probably do Zoom. We might do Google Hangouts. Has Google Hangouts been a problem for everybody? Are y'all familiar with that a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're okay with it? Kaylin, you're looking like maybe.
I haven't used it yet.
You haven't used it. Okay, it's basically the same thing. I'll send you a calendar invite. You'll be able to click on it. I think that might work better because we won't run into the time limit. Which I'm keeping it under an hour regardless of what happens or whatever we're using. But especially for the next one, there's a lot of info. These first two, there's a lot of info to get through. Because on Thursday we'll be talking about the two assessments we'll be doing: the Myers-Briggs and the strong interest inventory. So again, if you can have looked at the workbook before you get here, I will send on Canvas will also be a link to sign up for the thing, and I'll send calendar invites to everybody as well for Google Hangouts. And if worst case scenario, be on your Gmail and I'll send the invite there and you can click on it. Other than that, it works the same as Zoom. I just wanted to start with this since we hadn't talked at all to make sure we all could, and I know everybody's doing Zoom for their classes, right? And so I do not rate highly enough, apparently. I don't know if professors have a professional one where they can go as long as they want, but that's where I am. Okay. So again, I know there's a lot of listening today, and Thursday will be kind of the same too. But after that, we're going to really get into it. Kind of like you'll have actually something to do. You'll have those assessments to fill out. Okay. So really, just until then, just be reflecting kind of on where you are in this process. Like I said, what your goals and expectations are, and do that passions inventory. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here in Discovery, and I'm gonna